Well, thanks, Madam Chair, and I join in welcoming Director Clapper as well as all of our other witnesses today, and particularly Mr. Brennan as his first testimony as the Director of CIA. Mr. Director, congratulations, and to Bob Mueller. I had a conversation with Bob when his last term was ending and implored him to think about staying. I will expect to have that conversation again with you, Director Mueller. We may not be successful this time, but you have provided great leadership at a great agency, and all of America is safer because of the kind of leadership that you provided. So we'll have many more opportunities, I hope, to say thanks, but we don't want to miss any of those opportunities. I particularly appreciate all of you being here today to talk about the threats that face our nation. These threats come in all forms: terrorism, espionage, cyber, and good old-fashioned counterintelligence, and from all corners of the globe. Today, the American people will have the chance to hear firsthand from those on the front lines what these threats mean to the security of our nation. Let me just start out by noting that today's hearing follows a lively discussion over the past month about the potential for the domestic use of drones. While the administration has put many fears to rest over the last few days, this debate brought new attention to the difficulty Congress often faces in getting information from the executive branch. The intelligence community is obligated under the National Security Act to keep the Congressional Intelligence Committees fully and currently informed of its intelligence activities, including covert action. We cannot do the oversight the American people expect of us if every request for information becomes a protracted battle. As a group, our witnesses represent the entire intelligence community, and each of you has made a commitment to this committee to provide information when we request it. We understand there may be rare exceptions to this rule, but we are now operating in an environment in which the exception has become the rule, and this simply has to stop. Let me now turn to the threats facing our nation. We've heard it said over the past year that core al-Qaeda has been decimated and is on the run. Its Pakistan-based leadership is crumbling under the pressure of U.S. and allied counterterrorism efforts. But new threats posed by al-Qaeda affiliates and other similar organizations are emerging and possibly expanding in places like Yemen, North Africa, and Mali. The past 6 months alone have brought the terrorist attacks in Benghazi and Algeria that claimed innocent American lives. Clearly, these attacks show that radical and extreme ideologies are not going away anytime soon. Instead, these terrorist organizations are regrouping and gathering strength. When we entered Afghanistan in October 2001, our goal was to put the al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime out of business. Now, as we prepare to leave Afghanistan nearly 12 years later, the Taliban, the Haqqani Network, and similar groups in Afghanistan and Pakistan seem to have mostly survived years of counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations. This raises the inevitable question of whether these groups will be able to create a sanctuary like we saw before 9/11 once the U.S. coalition withdraws in 2014. As we face new threats from al-Qaeda affiliates, we are badly overdue for a long-term detention policy that allows us to fully and effectively interrogate terrorist detainees. Last week, Osama bin Laden's son-in-law was indicted in federal court in New York after being captured overseas. While Suleiman Abu Ghaith is finally facing justice for his long affiliation with bin Laden and al-Qaeda, I firmly believe this administration's refusal to place new detainees at Guantanamo Bay is hurting our ability to collect intelligence. It seems as though we now either just kill terrorists or give them Miranda warnings. Dead terrorists don't talk. And when we Mirandize the ones we do capture, after just 50 minutes or 90 minutes, we aren't likely to get the timely intelligence we need. 3 years ago, we had the same conversation following the failed Christmas Day bombing, and I'm disappointed this scenario seems to be repeating itself. Whether Abu Ghaith is ultimately tried in federal court or a military commission is not the primary question. It is whether we maximize our opportunity to gather good intelligence up front. Waiting for a potential plea deal before getting access again, as we saw with the Christmas Day bomber, is, I believe, simply the wrong approach. I'm very concerned that we have returned to the dangerous pre-9/11 reactive mindset where international terrorists were treated as ordinary criminals. This is a mistake we should not repeat. The administration's handling of Abu Ghaith also seems to directly contradict the National Defense Authorization Act, which specifically called for individuals like him to be held in military custody. Now, I understand the administration adopted procedures that effectively undermine the spirit of this military custody requirement. And what I believe is an abuse of the NDAA's waiver provision, the administration created broad accepted categories under which they can continue to avoid placing terrorists in military custody. I would simply ask if someone like Abu Ghaith will not be held in military custody for interrogation purposes, then who will be? Of course, terrorism is not our only threat. The possibility of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons and North Korea's nuclear tests and other provocations merit our close attention, as does the increasing conflict in Syria. It is critical that we ensure the intelligence community can give us clear reading into these hotspots and to what may lie over the horizon. At the same time, cyber espionage and intrusions are growing every day. If we are going to prevent the siphoning off of our intellectual property to hackers and nation states alike, then Congress must work with the private sector in a truly cooperative way. We must pass voluntary information sharing legislation that completely protects companies from the threat of lawsuits. The government must put its own cyber house in order, and we must make sure that our criminal penalties are sufficient to punish and deter cyber intruders. Gentlemen, today is your opportunity to give the country a real glimpse of what it means to be on the front lines of the intelligence community. There is no doubt that today's slimming budgets combined with increasing and diverse threats clearly presents a challenge to the entire intelligence community. Your task is not an easy one, but I am confident that the men and women of the intelligence community who work so hard every day in defense of this nation will rise to this challenge and not only get the job done, but under your leadership, they will do it well. Madam Chair, I thank you and look forward to a discussion with our witnesses.
Thank you.